Thank you. I'll introduce to you Dr. Samuel Pfeffers.
Hi, good morning. I'm Sam Pfeffers. I am the lead professor for engineering programs, science degrees in systems engineering, industrial engineering, and engineering management, all 4 years in Yuma in coordination with our partner institution, Arizona Western College, the local Yuma Community College. Good morning.
And Dr. Balishka Brianis.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Baleshka Brenes, and I'm Director of Ag Programs. So I support Tanya because Tanya does a lot of the Ag as well. So I manage the programs such as Ag Systems Management, which is actually our first degree only in Yuma. So that's a big thing for us that we got our own program because agriculture is so unique in Yuma that we're able to provide special program in agriculture. We also have sustainable plant systems and food safety, animal science. Students have to go to main campus to finish it, but we provide a lot of options and we're happy to be here. Thank you.
Well, without further ado, I'm going to jump into my presentation. Is everybody able to see the slide?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So as I mentioned, we are the academic programs. We are a little different in the sense compared to main campus because we are workforce development type of program. So in other words, we work with our community to try to determine where there are holes in the workforce development areas, and then we develop and support programs with our local community colleges. So we have Arizona Western College in Arizona, but we also partner with Imperial Valley College over in Imperial Valley, California. So that's what makes us a little bit different. And we are truly preparing students for the future of work. And so that's going to be the main topic. And we also believe in stackable credentialing, meaning that our philosophy is the more that a student can get hands-on experience all the way from middle school through high school, through the community college or the university, the more prepared they're going to be. So I'm going to start with this big picture way above the earth. And as we're looking at all the different types of careers and jobs, and I didn't get a chance to tell you that I started my career as a high school agriculture teacher. So I taught high school agriculture at Cibola High School 30 years ago. And again, as I know personally as an instructor, when we're trying to work with high school students and middle school students and college age students, how do we help them prepare in a way that truly gives them the value that they need so they can get out and get that career and land that job that they want to, that helps better their lives. So with that kind of big picture look, let's think about where the world is today. So when I was born many moons ago, or maybe not so many moons ago, there was only approximately 3.3 billion people on our planet. Today, 50 years later, we are pushing 8 billion or over 7.5 billion people. And it's predicted that by 2039 or sooner, we could be anywhere between 8 billion and 13 billion people. So again, looking at the big picture, how do we take that big picture thought and then bring it into a small community or our schools type of thinking when we're working with students and how we're guiding students? So what's happening in the world of work? There's a few things that are happening that I think really need to be pointed out. Number one, there's a current shortfall of 1.8 billion jobs. In other words, there's 1.8 billion jobs that go unfilled. And why do they go unfilled? They go unfilled because two reasons. One, there's a shortage of skilled workforce. There's people that don't have the credentials that they need in order to get those jobs. Or two, they don't have the ability, depending on where they're living, right? Sometimes those jobs are only open in certain areas, and so they don't have access to those jobs. The other thing that's important to kind of point out is that 2 billion jobs are predicted to disappear by 2030. So one thing we want to do as educators when we're working with students is to make sure that we're pointing students in the right direction. I use the example all the time. At one point in time, there were typewriter engineers that were actually put out, that was their job. Now, how many people would need typewriter engineers today? So again, as we're working with students, we have to not think about what we like, because we have a tendency to go back into what do we like, but instead we have to work around what's available to us. Another example of what's happening in the world of work, just to kind of give you an example, the driverless car. Because of the driverless car, and we've all been reading about it, we know it's right around the corner, they're already out on the marketplace doing testing. Because of that, they're predicting that all these jobs are going to be going away. All the way down to, I thought was interesting, fewer doctors and nurses, because there's not going to be as many accidents supposedly predicted due to driverless cars. So all these type of jobs are predicted to go away. Bad news, right? Well, not so bad news, because in return, we're going to have new jobs that are being created due to driverless cars. So we have increase in delivery dispatchers, traffic monitoring system, automated traffic designers, driverless ride experience, et cetera, et cetera. So in other words, as one phase of work disappears due to technology, usually multiple other jobs pop up. Right now, what's going on is there's a loss of jobs due to computerization. In other words, some jobs are disappearing, but in return, lots and lots of other jobs are popping up. Again, I like to, when I share with my own students, I didn't have a cell phone until I was 32 years old. And they look at me like I was crazy. Hodges, why would that ever happen? How could you allow it to happen? And I said, well, because they weren't invented. And just like cell phones weren't invented until I was 32, you're educating and working with students, preparing them for jobs that don't even sometimes and many times exist. So you have to help them think big and help them based on their strengths, be able to think a little bit outside the box. Currently, these are the jobs that are forecasted to disappear over the next 20 years. So we again have to say, okay, if those jobs are disappearing, what type of jobs are safe when we're guiding students in them? And really they come up to 3 types of job classifications. 1, fine motor skills and manipulation. The human eye and brain right now are the best at doing this. Even though we do have automation, we do have AI, we have all these things that are up and coming, but right now, fine motor skills and manipulation, still humans do the best. Creative intelligence, being able to not just be the button pusher, right? The button pusher is where the robotics and AI type of systems are going to come in. But the creative intelligence and the social intelligence, interacting with humans and people and groups, those are things that automation is not going to be able to replace, or at least remain what we call safe at this point. Again, things to think about as you're working with your students. The global growth industries that are predicted right now to be on the growth continue to be the green and sustainable energy areas, the personal care and health issue areas, online and for-profit education services, social networking and gaming, mobile apps, 3D printing, food production, et cetera, et cetera. So you can see kind of where the predicted growth areas are. But just because you put a student or you advise a student into some of those predicted growth areas does not guarantee them a job. In fact, right now, many of the students that do have those skill sets, they might have a certificate, they might have an associate's degree, they might even have a bachelor's degree, don't land the job because of what we're calling the skill gap. This is a brand new study that just was completed, and this paper was just published, and we have the sources down below, and I'd be willing to share it with you because it just came out this June. 51 land-grant universities all collaborated on this study. And they looked at the preparedness of the gap, in other words, student gap of preparedness to go to work. And they interviewed employers, alumni, students, and they looked at where those gaps were. So in other words, even though they might have the degree or the certificate, What were they not having? So the number one thing that they said that was important as it related to this gap or closing the gap is the students need to understand the role in the workplace and have a realistic career expectation. So in other words, knowing the content is not enough. It's knowing what the workplace would look like, getting your students into the workplace so they have realistic career expectations. In other words, I know I work with college students that think their first job out is going to be starting at 80 to 150,000, and that's their expectation. Well, that's unrealistic because they haven't really hung out with a bunch of other people apparently to know what the expectation would be. The second one is recognizing and dealing with constructively with conflict. That one's interesting. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Number 3, accepting and applying critique and direction in the workplace. Many people get their feelings hurt. They're super sensitive. And we have to be able to help our students know that there's such a thing as constructive criticism and being able to utilize constructive criticism to the benefit of the student, or the employee eventually, which is what we're all working on trying to get them to. Number 4 is listening effectively. Number 5, communicating accurately and concisely. Again, we're dealing with a group of students, and it's going to continue on, that they communicate more through Instagram, texting, Snapchat, other methods of communication. So their verbal skills at communication and being able to articulate exactly what they're saying comes a little difficult to them sometimes. And those are areas that we need to be practicing with them. Number 6, realizing the effects of their decision. So in other words, there's a consequence to every action. Are we sure if we move one thing or make a change in one thing that we're okay with the consequence? And being able to teach students that every time we make a decision, there's usually going to be a consequence, and we have to be able to be looking at the consequence in advance and being able to accept whether we're ready for that consequence or not. Number 7, building professional relationships. It's not anymore about just me, right? There's no I in team. Right now, the way the world works in work is everything and everybody works as a team. Number 8, navigating change. Number 9, identifying and analyzing problems. And number 10, the transfer of knowledge from work to the situation, one or another. This one I wanted to kind of point out, it is very interesting, that navigating conflict. The only skill that all 3 of the stakeholder groups recognized, very, very similar, is recognizing how they can deal with constructive conflict in the workplace. This may be connecting with different sets of employees, employers, new employees in the workplace, and how can we then help students, again, by putting them through practices and different situations in the classroom, that the students can practice this conflict navigation so that they, again, know that it's okay, it's agree to disagree, right? It's okay. And we can work together and maybe take some of everybody's thoughts to maybe come up with even a better idea than initial. So some of the activities that this study came out that help build employability skills in our students. And I know some of you are all the way down from middle school, and some of you work with college students. So I think, you know, there's a range, and but all of this can be applicable at all ages to a degree. So the most important thing is work. The sooner we can get students in the work environment, the better. And again, middle school students, we know they're not going to be working, but they can be shadowing, right? Maybe they can be doing drive-alongs. Maybe they can be having Zoom meetings at a distance so that they can see a little bit about what the work environment looks like. The second one is internships. Again, a little step up maybe from shadowing, which a little bit more long-term, but again, a lot of students, even our college students, don't understand the benefits of an internship as it relates to just understanding work and vocabulary, or work talk, as we say. Being around the environment so you understand processes of work. And sometimes those are things that can't be taught in the classroom, but only by being in an internship can you see that. The third one is career and major related student organizations. I know that almost all schools, from middle schools through high school to college, have student organizations. And encouraging our students to join those student organizations, become active, are a very important part of the leadership piece of getting students prepared for the workforce. The fourth one is volunteering. The fifth one is research with a mentor. Again, I know a lot of the times you say, well, how can my middle school student or high school student be doing research with a mentor? You would be surprised how many little, what looks like little, but could turn into larger research projects just by asking companies to be working individually, even if it is through Zoom, working with the student on some type of research. The sixth is international travel. And even if our students can't travel, like many of our students in Yuma can't, it's getting them tied through Zoom communities of international. So in other words, they can see and talk to people that are all over the world, because we don't just do business and industry in one location. Most of our work is in groups, and many, many times it's with people from all over the world. The seventh one is sports, learning how to work as a team. And 8 is judging or competitive events. Again, I know that we have Future Farmers of America or FFA, FBLA, there's all kinds of wonderful student clubs that we can be encouraging our students. So all of those combined help with reducing conflict, increasing persistence, helping students adapt to change, and ambiguity as it relates to work environments. So those are kind of the things that we can all be including from all grade levels that will help our students become prepared for the skills of the work. So what are they looking for? Sense making, social intelligence, novel and adaptive thinking, being able to think outside the box, not just being a button pusher, cross-cultural competencies where we all understand and are sensitive to working with different cultures, computational thinking, and new media literacy. So your job and my job, all of our jobs as educators, is creating the workforce pipeline and being able to have that pipeline be tight at each one of those intersections where nothing is leaking. We don't want any students to be following through. And again, that's part of not only the communications amongst all of us, but the stackable credentialing, teachers working at all levels in the handoff. So in other words, middle school teachers working with the high school teachers, the high school teachers working with the community college and university professors, and all of us working together to create that pipeline. Overall, you are, as teachers, the economic drivers of the future. Whether you know it or not, there's a lot of power that you have as you're helping these young people figure out what type of life and what type of work and what type of career that they want to have. So in 1961, IBM's top of the line was the Model 7030. I was not born yet, I can tell you that part of it. But when I was in college, our computers in the 80s took up an entire room. We used Fortran and punch cards. It looks so different than today. This is what scientists used to look like, right, in technology. Today, this is what technology looks like. And this. And this. This is what controlled environment technology looks like. We're now thinking of ways that we can set up life on Mars and distant planets. And food safety technology. How do we stop diseases and pathogens? How do we control COVID? Right? And the One Health thinking. So technology looks very, very different than what it did even 50 years ago. And it's going to continue to change at such a fast rate that, again, we, as I mentioned, sometimes have to remember that we are educating students for future jobs. So what might the future hold? Is it something that came out of these comic books, you know, as you think about it, our superheroes of the future? So what career options do students have? What education do they need? That's individual, right? Looking at students, their individual strengths, their weaknesses, what type of careers are in your communities. In Arizona, most of our students, if you take out the big metropolitan areas, continue to live in their communities or within 100 to 150 mile radius the rest of their life. So we have to, as we're guiding students, remember that and help them think about that as to, is the job that they're preparing for in middle school and high school going to be around in their local communities and in their state or within a 150-mile radius. So the regional growth industries in your community, and these are some of the ones that Arizona has listed as their top regional growth industries: manufacturing, education, property and business services, health and community services, transportation, warehousing, logistics, tourism, agriculture, advanced manufacturing, engineering, information and communication technology, and data sciences. Helping your students to identify their regional growth industries will help them as they're thinking about, okay, for real, what type of career do I want to have? Another wonderful thing to work with, and I'm sure many of you know about this, are the 16 career clusters that are available on several different websites. And remember that just because a student picks a cluster, and especially at a middle school or high school level, that doesn't mean that one set job. It just opens up a set of multiple jobs that students can look at in those cluster areas. The other thing that I think is super important is that we have to remind students that math and science are cool. Math and science are built into almost every single job of the future to some degree. And a student has to be able to say, okay, I might not be a math whiz, but through persistence and studying and practice, I can improve my math or science skills. One of the saddest things that I hate as I work with students is I'll get students that come up and they're working through the community college system and they'll say, oh, I want to go into XYZ area of studying, and they've never had chemistry. They've never had some of these heavier sciences, and they are already running behind as they're competing with their classes of students that have had chemistry. So again, as you're working with students, it cannot just be the fun stuff, right? The shooting and making of rockets, the doing all the hands-on type of work that we love to do in the classrooms. We have to remember that the foundation of creating future leaders in these areas and these growth areas that we just talked about is the foundation of math and science. And then on top of the math and science, the experiential learning, camps, summer internships, shadowing, the skill-based competitions, as we talked about earlier, working in clubs and groups, the active listening, being able to make sure students have an opportunity in your classroom to demonstrate how they are showing their active listening skills. And then their roles, being able to do mock interviews, mock competitions, playing out and role-playing different scenarios that might occur. These are all great ways to teach employability skills that no matter if a student decides maybe and changes their major or changes their career goals or whatever as they progress through, all of these skill sets will continue on with them. So many choices, so many choices. So how do you help guide students? So here are a few of career choices that we centralize and focus on in Yuma. Again, this is very different and might not be the same career focus areas in your communities, but for Yuma. So the first one is engineering. Right now, there continues to be a shortfall of engineers all over the country, not just in Yuma, Arizona. And no, this is not the engineer. So then what is engineering? Engineering is the rigorous and systematic application of mathematics and science to solve practical problems. So what do engineers do? They do a bunch of everything. In other words, there's research, there's development, there's testing, there's design, there's analysis, there's process control, there's production and maintenance and technical support, consulting and sales. And many times when we think of engineering, we don't think of sales. We don't think of business. We don't think of education. We don't think of research. So again, think about the different areas of type of work that engineers do. So what kind of engineers are there? There's construction engineers, there's ag engineers, there's computer engineers, there's chemical engineers, there's mining engineers, there's electrical engineers, there's engineering management, there are biosystems engineers, there's petroleum engineers, And the list goes on and on and on. So just because a student says, I'm interested in engineering, as you can see, there's many, many choices for them. So how do I become an engineer? And this is the area, especially from the middle school and the high school, a lot of the times students don't understand the process. Again, having that good science and math foundation, being enrolled, if possible, in career and technical type of education courses in the middle school and high school so that they can get hands-on experiences, taking as much science and math as possible, being accepted to college, enrolling in the foundation engineering classes. And I know there's many high schools around the state of Arizona that offer an intro to engineering class as well. Once they've completed all their upper division courses, they get accepted into their upper level courses where they will be taking their senior level courses, taking a senior design, taking the fundamentals of engineering exam, registering for working in the field, earning the master's degree, and then eventually even going on to become a professional engineer. So as you can see, there's many different levels and a lot of work that goes into becoming an engineer. So what about technology? The work options of today look a little bit different, and it's not just so easy. There's computer science. There's informatics or applied computing. There's cyber operations, both on a defensive side, and there's operations, network operations. So again, just by saying I want to go into technology, there's lots and lots of choices even within that one area. Ag careers. A lot of the times we don't think about agriculture. There are over 22,000 jobs in agriculture related fields that go unfilled every year. This is a great opportunity for students to address some of the world's most pressing challenges. We will have to continue to feed people and clothe people. Currently in agriculture, if you have a bachelor's degree, there's 100% placement. Somebody's got to continue to feed the world, especially as we get closer to those, 8 billion, 10 billion people. So what are some of the careers in agriculture? There's agribusiness, ag education, animal sciences, biotechnology, environmental sciences, food safety, nutrition, plant sciences. Again, a lot of chemistry and sciences are needed, and a lot of the times people don't think about the type of sciences and math that are required to go into the many different fields of agriculture to be successful. The foreman is going to one day be gone, and even the field workers are one day going to be replaced. We need people in agriculture that will be in the ag systems piece that will be bridging that gap with technology. So as instructors and professors and leaders and teachers, it's important to look at college and career readiness, helping the students to think, how do I think? How do I pose a problem and frame it in a way that I can solve it and come up with better ways of solving it? How can I do some small research? How can I communicate better? How can I increase my ability to look at precision and accuracy, including charts and graphs? What do I know as a student? What is the content? What is going to motivate me to continue on and continue to study in those areas? What type of time does it require for me to enter the workforce at the different levels, as we talked about, whether again it's a certificate or whether it's an associate's or a bachelor's degree or a master's degree? What type of energy, effort is going to be required for me to do that? And what type of learning strategies can I, as a student, identify early so that I can help myself become better in those areas of weakness that I might have? How do I act as a student? Taking ownership of my own learning by asking the question, why? How do I create my own study habits? How do I discipline myself as a young student from middle school to high school through college so that I can create study habits that will continue on and help me to be successful? How do I, as a student, develop those critical thinking skills? How do I go? How do I attend community college if I need to? How do I attend university or community college or any other of the programs? I know there's a lot of boot camps and things like that out there. How do I pay for that? What are college systems? What are university systems? How do I, as a student, create awareness and exploration? How do I discover and choose the career path that's a good fit for me and the type of learner that I am? And how do I find ways to subsidize the cost of my education through scholarships, through grants? Again, these are questions that we all need to be including into our content of teaching that we do every day with our students and helping so we can better help our students be prepared. There's so much benefit in experiential learning. It's no longer just about theory in the classroom. It's hands-on, it's working, and it's summer camp. So at this time, I just wanted to share a couple summer camps that we're involved in that your students are, they're open to apply to as well. This one is Ag Discovery, and we partner with the USDA on a 2-week summer residential camp. So if you're a middle school through high school student looking for these fun, hands-on type of interaction, the government gives us, the universities, the land grants. They're all over the country. There's 21 of them. They give us money to fund these hands-on opportunities. So what do we learn in the 2 weeks? Well, first of all, they live in a dorm, so they're away from their parents for 2 weeks. They do their own laundry. They control their own money because we give them money cards. The students learn about agribusiness, plant science, animal science, food safety, ag leadership, entomology. There's another camp called Safer Food Camp. This one is for early high school students learning that are interested in food safety. There's summer technology camps for grades 5th through 9th for those students that are really into technology programs. This one costs $75, but there are scholarships that are available to them. There's Summer Engineering Academy. Again, this is for the high school student, early high school student. Again, there's scholarships that are available to students that are interested in attending. So it's through all this combined. It's teachers working with industry, working with our community college partners and our university partners that gives our students the extra support, early advising, career counseling, shadowing, academic and community mentoring, all of which decrease our students' barriers and help students achieve their career goals. Which ultimately, it's all about them being able to support themselves and their family and contribute back, having the career of their dreams. So that's all that I have. I know that was kind of a lot of information. At this time, I want to, again, turn it back over to our panel. And then we're open. I think I'm going to let them each have a moment or two just to kind of frame out their information. And then we will all have question answers. How are we on time, Erin? I think you're
good. We've got, I would say, about 15 minutes or so probably on time. We're at 8:40, so just to be able to get you off really up. The other thing that we could do, Tanya, is you could drop off, start getting set up, and the panel could stay on, but our team has to get on to another session as well. So I would say 15, 18 minutes, something like that.
Okay, I will drop off and let them ask questions. So thank you. It was nice meeting everyone.
Excellent. U of A team, I didn't know, I know Tanya had said maybe you'd take a minute or so to kind of introduce your area, or do you want to just field some questions? What is your pleasure?
I guess we can introduce ourselves a little bit and then maybe they will think about some questions, or we can just make it interactive as we go, you know.
Sounds good.
I guess I'll start and just tell you a little bit about myself, especially when looking at all this information. It completely makes sense to me that everything that is needed in order to make those decisions. Because a lot of times I remember when people ask me like, what do you want to do when you grow up? That's like a very hard question. And we use it very like, you know, like it's an easy question for kids to reply, but we need to give them the resources and exposure so that they can make those decisions. Because most of the time they would just say whatever their parents are doing, or their uncles, someone they know, and they just want to replicate it, but they don't really know the big picture. And I think another thing that we've been doing here at Yuma that's really helped, in particular for the ag programs, because we've noticed that a lot of times students just think it's working in the field. And especially in the Hispanic community as well, we've seen that if their parents work in the fields, they don't want their kids to do that. So they are like, they want them to be in an office, or, you know, like not in the field or working in agriculture, which they think that's the only option. So, and especially in the culture, it also, they have a big influence on their decisions. So we're trying to create more awareness about all the different opportunities that exist in agriculture. And what we've been doing as well is doing tours for teachers and counselors, because a lot of times students go to their counselors and they don't know as much. So it's not that they don't want to, but we have the responsibility to educate them as well. So we've been doing tours with them and taking them to the field, taking them to the different industries, and that's a great advantage that we have here, that industry is really friendly. They allow us to go, and they really are committed to the education, because they want also local people to be prepared and take the jobs that are out there. There's every day we get so many internships, so many opportunities that we can't fill them all. And so I know there's a lot of opportunities. And that's what I was thinking while hearing that. So if there's any questions, or I don't know if Diana or Sam want to jump in.
Can I go first, Dr. Buffers? Okay. So I'm going to share with you a little bit of my experience. This is my first year working for the University of Arizona. And the thing that I've learned during this year is, like Tanya mentioned in her presentation, is about the hands-on experiences and the experiential learning. So my programs, if you remember in my, when I introduced myself, I represent technology. That we had programs like computer science, applied computing, and cyber operations. So the big challenge for me right now is like to find those opportunities for my students here in Yuma. Those hands-on experience, those internship experience, and I've been, my colleagues and Tanya have helped me a lot to find these opportunities. For example, this last spring semester, I had the opportunity to teach the senior capstone class for the applied computing program. So my students had the opportunity to build or to solve like a real world problem, and they build 2 different softwares for the community, that in this case is University of Arizona, Yuma. Also, the other thing that captures my attention in her presentation is about the skills, the new skills that the students need to have. And she mentioned about the computational thinking. And maybe if we want to talk about a little bit, or if you have like a specific question about that, I teach a class like that the name is computational thinking and doing. And I like that class because it represents what she mentioned, like there's the skills, the mathematical skills and the logical skills that everybody needs to know, no matter if they're ag students or engineering. We have to train our students to have that kind of logic if you want to success in the real world right now. I don't know if you have a question or if you want to jump in, Dr. Prefers.
Well, seeing no immediate questions from the audience, I'll go ahead and start. And I'll take a slightly different tack. I may be somewhat at risk of preaching to the choir here. I appreciate that everyone in the audience is a CTE teacher, and you're in the business of teaching the things that adults do for a living to young people that definitely are not adults. And I salute you for accepting that particular challenge. A question I get asked often by students and by influencers and community members is, isn't engineering hard? And I always say the same thing, and I say, yes, if you're doing it right, it is. But that doesn't mean that you can't teach it starting at fairly early stages. I think we all appreciate as educators the principle of developmentally appropriate instruction. And in Tanya's presentation, she spoke to what engineering is, and it's that rigorous and systematic application of mathematics and science to solve practical problems. Well, obviously in middle school and high school, students have just only had so much opportunity to learn just so much mathematics and science. So just the sheer volume of knowledge they have to apply to that practical problem is going to be somewhat limited. But I would submit that we can still start to teach them the process. And particularly in engineering, that's the design process, that's the engineering decision-making process. And we can help develop in them those habits of mind that make them effective, particularly in engineering, but in lots of other career fields as well. Attention to detail, precision in execution, and teamwork, because engineering particularly, like many professions, is a team sport. This concept of someone sitting alone in a cubicle with design requirements hit the inbox, you develop the design, put them in the outbox, and wait for the next set of requirements. That's a complete misconception of what the world of professional practice in engineering is all about. So I would submit that, yes, learning those foundational mathematics and science skills are very important, as Tanya emphasized, but it's not an either or choice, that those things can happen in parallel with learning the processes of particular professions that students may enter into when they've completed their education. With that, we are happy to entertain your questions or comments. Thank you.
Great. We could probably stretch it to about 7 minutes to make sure that you can get into your next session, but please feel free to jump in.
Right, I got here late. I was having some technology issues. So some of some of the activities that she mentioned will there be some kind of way for us to resource that? Like the ag summer program?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I'll just double check with Tanya and make sure that we can, probably the easiest thing to do is send out her presentation. Obviously you'll have it linked, but the video recording, but at the same time to be able to have that presentation. And then maybe even, I'm sure she's got some resource links as well that she may be able to put together for us to make it really easy to just be able to jump in. Thanks for that question, Jean. Great.
Thank you.
I think you were going to jump in, Annette.
Yes, I feel the presentation was absolutely phenomenal, and I'm so glad to hear from each of the speakers regarding engineering. I do have several students that are pharmacy tech students in their junior and senior years that I see the potential for an engineering background for as far as college is concerned. And so I would like to know from the speakers that are present, what are some ways that we can find hands-on or mentors or shadowing opportunities for students that have the potential for an engineering career, even though they're in a specialized CTE like pharmacy. For me, because we do the design and the processes of engineering in pharmacy, as far as them developing certain products, researching the market to see what medications are needed, the hands-on process of making the medications, marketing the medications, understanding the pharmacology. So a lot of the design elements and processes in engineering are very similar to pharmacy, the pharmaceutical field. And I would love to hear your thought process about how to engage students and give them an idea of engineering, even if they haven't thought of it. Like I believe Dr. P first was saying that, oh, engineering is hard, I don't want to do that. But if they had practical exposure to engineering or engineering processes, I think that make a huge difference for them as far as a career trajectory, because they do have, I have honors and AP students that have had chemistry. They love physics. They love math. So I'd like to know you guys' viewpoints.
A little bit. I think there's two parts to the question there, if I understood it correctly. One, with opportunities for shadowing and things like that, there are a couple of ways that, particularly with engineering, one of the things that we do here in Yuma is twice a year, once per semester, once in the fall and once in the spring, we have the Community Advisory Board meeting, which actually in engineering is a part of our accreditation process. We are required to demonstrate to our accreditors that we incorporate the feedback from our constituents, from the employers of our graduates, into our educational process. But that is, in addition to an important pedagogical discussion, a great networking opportunity. So we bring together leaders from across the engineering enterprise regionally at those events. I would ask Aaron if we can, if we exchange essentially email lists at the end of this, if people are interested in that event. Obviously we're doing things distributively now. We're under the COVID conditions. So exactly how that's going to shape up this coming fall semester will be our next one. To be honest, I really don't know yet. But we will endeavor to have some sort of a meeting of the minds. Also, and just briefly, with essentially developmentally appropriate engineering projects, there are dozens of them out there on the internet. NASA in particular has a huge library of free downloadable material at different, teacher developed, teacher approved for different grade levels. There's also a program called EIE, Engineering is Elementary, which is run by the Boston Science Museum. And a little bit, you can just use your creativity. One of the ones that we've had a lot of success with that students really enjoy is building a ball catapult using nothing but popsicle sticks and rubber bands. In engineering, we are frequently constrained by the available materials, and that's a way to kind of introduce those ideas of material constraints, material properties, and if I want to make the ping pong ball go further, I can put more tension in the rubber band. I can make the launch arm longer. I can do combinations thereof. So even with a very rudimentary understanding of physics, students can still come up with ways to okay, how do I make the ping pong ball go further? And if you've got maybe more advanced students in high school, as opposed to just further, how can I do things like make the point of impact more consistent? Or, can I go from being able to put the ping pong ball into a trash can to being able to put the ping pong ball into a Dixie cup? That, those sorts of problems are things that students can apply the process to solve the problem.
Yes, we've done something similar with popsicle sticks and marshmallows to build a tower. And the students, when I put them in groups of, according to their multiple intelligences, so they were with a different group of students than that they would normally pick to solve this problem. And it was actually phenomenal. So I do regularly activities like that to instill team building, design process, utilizing technical and science information from other classes. And so, yes, and that's where I see the engineering potential of certain students, the mindset in order to work in a group collaboratively like that. So those are great activities but again, the goal for me is because I don't teach engineering, is to give them the exposure to other experiential learning outside of my class.
Great. Well, we're right at time, and I want to make sure, I don't know if our educators have another session right at 9 o'clock or not, but just in case, I'll be brief, but also we know our panelists need to get into the other session. Just want to thank you all so much for being on this morning. Great to see all of you, and look forward to probably seeing you in another session either today or tomorrow as your host. So thanks, everyone. Appreciate it very much. We'll talk with you soon. Thanks.
Aaron, may I have a quick question?
Thank you.